All right, welcome everybody. It is officially 9 a.m. on this beautiful Thursday morning. I appreciate everybody who is jumping on the call, especially the people that are on the West Coast where it's a little bit earlier right now. So, just to give everybody a heads up, I know it is very early for the West Coast people. Um, all of these are recorded. They're all recorded. They're all sent out after the fact. So if for whatever reason you can't make it live, you can always watch after the fact. Obviously, it's a lot easier for me to help you guys and answer your questions if we're live and I can do everything right, right on point. But if you do miss a session, you can just, rewatch it. So I'm going to jump right into it. I have a couple things I want to cover, but first I'm going to jump right into the questions. And I'm going to start off by just going over really quickly this Facebook page. So for those of you who have not jumped on the Facebook page and asked questions throughout the week, I definitely want to encourage you to jump on. And essentially, all that you literally have to do once you jump onto this page, just type any sort of question that you have throughout the week into the chat box here. Click post, and then within usually 24 to 48 hours, and sometimes even sooner, I will get you an answer back. And then we're going to cover it live just to make sure that I get total clarity so that you are fully comprehending and getting, the answer to your question, and also so that the people who are on this can also review and kind of hear what other people need, because in a lot of cases there may be people who are a little bit ahead of one person or a little bit behind another person, but you'll kind of get a good vision of where you want to go in the future. So one question that I haven't answered that came in 9 hours ago is from Mark over in LA. And his question was, how do I keep my calls and tasks going when the appointments start rolling? And so effectively, the problem that you have, Mark, is the problem that basically all of us have, is that when you're a salesperson and you are out meeting with sellers and buyers, you feel like you should be at a desk following up. And then when you're at the desk following up, you feel like you should be out with clients. And so the answer to that is really simple. For sure, for you, you need some sort of admin type person. So there's two kind of ways that you can do this, especially if you're a real estate agent. The first is that you get somebody on your team. Let me just back up for a second. One important concept that you really have to get down sooner is really the fact that you just have to leverage your time. So with all of this stuff, you want to always be pushing yourself towards the highest income producing activities. And so if you actually looked at what you did over the course of the week and wrote it down in a journal, and then look back and said, what of the things that I did during this 40 to 80-hour work week could somebody else at a very low level be doing? Those are the tasks that you want to, piece by piece, bit by bit, get rid of and out of your life. So, for example, for you, Mark, if meeting with a seller one-on-one is a $300 an hour activity, and following up with calls at a desk is a $15 an hour activity, you need to be pushing all of your activities towards the $300 an hour activity. And especially now that you're getting leads, you're going to get busier and busier, and you really need to start thinking about how to leverage your time out. So as a real estate agent in particular, there's two ways that you can do this. The first is to get somebody on your team. So I know that you're in a kind of a medium-sized brokerage, but there should probably be somebody there. There's tons of people in the real estate industry that they love real estate, but they actually either will not or cannot do the $300 an hour work. And I know, Mark, for you specifically, you're really good at the $300 an hour work. So you may be able to find somebody in your office, sorry, that's able to do the $15 an hour work. And now, with you having leads, there's two ways that you can compensate them. Number one, you can either just literally pay them the $15 an hour rate or whatever it ends up being, $15, $20 an hour. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter for you because if you're doing 40 hours of $300 an hour work, you're going to be able to afford to pay somebody. The second thing that you can do if you don't want to outlay cash in the very beginning is get somebody in your real estate office on your team that can help you do a lot of this stuff and compensate them by working on some of your deals. And so you could either feed them buyer leads, you could give them a percentage of the deals they work on. So like, for example, in my office, when the seller lead comes in, my inside sales agent's hitting it. And for every deal that closes, my inside sales agent gets 20% of the total commission. And so the benefit to an arrangement like that is you're not upfronting any of the money, and they're getting paid and you're getting paid when the deal closes. But if you have enough buyer leads and you don't want to work buyer leads, and which you shouldn't really be working a lot of buyer leads in the near future, they could take all your buyer leads, and part of the requirement for you giving them the buyer leads could be that they have to do some of this administrative stuff for you. But either way, regardless of kind of how you actually set it up, you definitely 100% need to be leveraging out your time. So let me know if you want any further clarification on that. But if not, definitely something to work on for you, in the short and over the long haul. And over the very long haul, what you're going to want to do is find a good salesperson. So you're a really good salesperson right now, but to totally leverage out your time over the long haul, you're even going to want to replace yourself in the sales role, and you just literally be managing the business. And so you won't be going on any appointments, you won't be doing any administrative tasks, but you'll actually just be driving the total business. All right. Second question up. So some of these are going to be, yeah. And so Mark, you said this is a good start. Thank you. So we can go into more detail offline if you want to about how to strategically do this, but that's kind of a general outline. So some program specific questions about leads. Do you add all of the leads that come in to Follow Up Boss as contacts in your cell phone? And for example, do you store them with their first and last name? I don't recommend doing this. I don't think you're going to get a huge benefit out of doing that because you're going to have so many leads that are coming in. It's not. It will be something that will take up a little bit of your time, and I don't feel like it'll give you any real value unless you're storing them in your cell phone to then just go through them and you're tagging them as leads somehow and you're just running through them. But if you're going to do that, I think you'd be better off just going through them directly on the dialer. And so what we do internally is for every lead that comes in, we use a program, and this is not something really that you need to do on day one. We use a program called Zapier. And what Zapier does is it actually connects two programs together and shares information. So when a lead comes in into Follow Up Boss, it goes automatically to Better Voice. And Better Voice is the calling program that we use on our desktop. So automatically when a lead comes in, it goes into Better Voice with the name and the phone number. And the great thing about Better Voice and Follow Up Boss is that anytime that you make a call on Better Voice on your computer, it logs it in Follow Up Boss. So you can actually see without putting any notes in how many calls were made. And if you've actually gone through some of, if we've called through some of your leads, you've probably even seen some Better Voice calls within the Follow Up Boss system. But I wouldn't worry too much about this on day one because I don't think it's not the first thing to really worry about. Is there a way we can tell where the lead came from? Internet, Facebook, Google, or a partner site? Yeah, so you can, if a lead came in, let me just see if I can pull up one on Facebook as an example. Bear with me for a second here. All right, so if it's a Facebook lead, it'll usually be tagged here with Facebook seller lead. The rest of them should all be directly from the internet, which is typically Google or a partner site. But at the end of the day, here's the thing when it comes to internet leads specifically, it doesn't matter because the person half the time doesn't even remember where they filled out a form. And it might sound crazy to think that, but like when somebody fills out a form on Facebook, half the time they say they just filled something out online and they don't have any sort of reference. And then trying to figure out where it came from is only going to slow you down. So I would just use the same script every single time, which is that something to the effect of, hi, this is Tom from Ocean City Development. I just got your contact information that you filled out online. Is there a day and time we can come out and take a look at the property? Because that's really all that matters. Where the lead source came from, you don't even want to get into that conversation. You can, but it'll slow you down. So I would treat them, every internet lead, exactly the same. As I mentioned, for everybody that's in the program last night, I sent out an email that we hired an inside sales agent to proactively do some cold calling for everybody. So when it is a cold calling lead, I'll just show you really quickly what that looks like. Again, bear with me while I just get this open really quick. All right, cool. So this is what a cold calling lead looks like. And so it's actually going to say in the source, cold calling. And so these you do want to approach a little bit differently for two reasons. Number one, we actually did call them and have a conversation with them. So it's unlikely that they're not going to remember that. The cold calling stuff is a little bit different than online where somebody doesn't really remember where they filled out a form. When somebody gets a call on their cell phone randomly asking about potentially selling their property, it's usually something that they remember. And so you're going to see the cold calling here, but you're also going to see the notes. So it's going to say the brief information about what happened on the call. And for all of these, the goal for the inside sales agent when they're making calls for all of you is to get a phone appointment for you. And so in this case, this person agreed for a phone appointment on Saturday, any time of the day. We try to pin them down for a specific time, and a lot of times what you'll see is it'll say agreed for a phone appointment on Saturday, 4/29 at 10 a.m., and then you literally have a phone appointment with them. And so you'll see those. Those are going to start coming in to Follow Up Boss within probably the next 3 weeks. All right, what is the difference between the drip campaign and the internet lead action plan? So follow up a drip campaign, when somebody references a drip campaign, that's just a very generic term that's effectively saying that you're going to drip on somebody, meaning passively follow up with them. And so most drip campaigns are email campaigns, and they're continuously just emailing somebody until you get a response. Whereas in Follow Up Boss, the internet lead action plan. So Follow Up Boss allows you to create things called action plans, which are specific types of drip campaigns. So if you go into the action plans in Follow Up Boss, we have a bunch of them. You can use any of them. But for example, if you look at this specific action plan, like the 1 month delay action plan, that's for an example of when somebody tells you, yes, I'm interested in selling my house, but I'm going on vacation to Paris and I'm coming back on May 27th of 2017. And so if you know that you have to call somebody back in a month, you're going to want to use this specific action plan, which is a 1 month delay, which is a drip campaign that starts 30 days after the date that you click it. And so the internet lead action plan is the action plan that automatically kicks on when an internet lead comes in. And all that's going to do is going to prompt you to make calls and also shoot off emails over the course of time. And so if you want to actually look at, what the action plans are, you can go into the back end of this, you can look at them. And if for whatever reason you want to create a separate action plan, you can create a separate action plan for yourself. However, you really shouldn't need to do this because I've created a million of these, and if you want to specifically achieve some sort of follow-up and you don't see it in here, let me know, and it may already be in here, and if it's not, I can probably create it for you so that we have it on file for everybody. All right, can you go over examples of when to stop the internet lead action plan? So this goes for every action plan. So these action plans, when you look at them, let me just pull up the internet one just so that all right, so the internet lead action plan right here. So right when the lead comes in, it creates a task to make a phone call. And then immediately, it also sends out an email. So these continue to go off. It prompts you to keep making phone calls, and it automatically sends out emails. And so the only reason why you'd ever stop an action plan, and you do want to pause it, is if you've actually spoken to somebody. So once you've spoken to somebody, at that point, you don't want any quote-unquote dripping to continue because it won't make sense to that seller. So if, for example, you send out the first email goes out on April 27, 2017, and it says, is there a day and time that we can come out and meet you to make you an offer? And then you speak to them an hour later, and then you leave the action plan on. What's going to happen the next day is it's going to say, did you get my original email? Is there a day and time that we can come out and meet you and make you an offer on your property? So you do want to shut them off. If for some reason you don't shut them off and the person gets that email and they get confused, it's not a big deal. It's a very easy thing to explain, but you do want to shut them off when you can. How do we tell what all the different action plans mean? So they they're they're supposed to be named according, pretty simple according to what they do. Really, the only ones that you want to worry about, there's a bunch of them in here. The only ones that you really should be using are the Internet Lead Action Plan, which comes on automatically. So you really don't want to touch that until you talk to somebody. The only other ones you really want to worry about that you're probably going to use are the ones associated with a time frame. And so if you go through these, you're going to see a 1 month delay, a 2 month delay, a 3 month delay, a 5 month delay, a 1 week delay, a 2 week delay. And so those are the ones that you really want to work on. The only other three that I'll mention quickly is there's a twice a year action plan, a quarterly action plan, and a long-term monthly follow-up action plan. And so again, these are just named according to the time frame. The twice a year action plan will prompt you to reach out to them, in 180 days. You would use the twice a year action plan if somebody kind of says, yeah, I was just, fooling around online. I might sell, I might not. I'm not going to sell anytime soon. The twice a year is kind of like just to check in with them, just to see if anything's changed. What does 5 opens in Follow Up Boss mean? So that is in reference to when you get a lead and one of these automated emails go out. Let me see if I can find one where I know an automated email has gone out. All right, so this lead came in, the email went off, and you can see here it says 2 opens. 2 opens simply means that they've opened the email twice. In reality, I don't know that this is 100% accurate because I've seen ones that say like 15 opens, and I have a hard time believing that somebody's actually opened my email 15 times. But it really doesn't matter that much because if you see the opens, at least one open, you know that they opened it, they got the message, right? So whether they opened it once or they opened it 10 times, they've opened it. The more important thing that you kind of want to look for here is when you see a red marker here that says bounced, and in that case, you know you have a bad email, so you really can only follow up with them via text and calling. If someone emails or calls or whatever, says not interested, stop bugging me, do you trash the lead or do you put them on a plan? So you have to be really careful with these ones. One of my first deals that I ever did was with somebody who actually called us. They said that they wanted to sell their house. We called them back maybe a day later. They screamed at us, told us never to call them again, and I was a rookie and I had no idea that, what would possibly happen, and we did not follow up with them. We just let them go. We said this person's not interested in selling their house, and long story short, a few months later they called us back and they sold us their house at one of the biggest discounts I've ever gotten. So one thing that you have to keep in mind always with motivated sellers is that they have a lot of things going on in their life. Not all of them are good, and sometimes they're very stressed out. So when you speak to them on the phone, if they give you an attitude or they're mad or they're angry, it's not at you, and it doesn't always necessarily mean that they're not selling their house. So what I always recommend doing when you are talking to a seller is when they say that they're not interested, you always want to push them for a time frame. So I've had sellers that have told me they're not selling at any point in the near future, and then I follow up with them and say, oh, okay, do you mean like you're not selling for like 2 years? And then they'll say, oh no, I'm selling in 3 months. So what can be, not interested or I'm not ready right now can mean a lot of different things. So when they tell you that, I would always just follow up with them and just say, okay, no problem. Just so I know, are you going to be selling at any point in the next 3 months, a year, 5 years, never? And then depending upon what they say, I would then go into follow-up boss and set the appropriate action plan. So for example, if somebody says not interested and then they tell me, well, things might change, I just don't know, but don't call me. I'd probably put them on like a twice a year or a quarterly action plan just to continue to check in with them. And as you kind of accumulate a lot of these like not so great leads, these are the ones that you're going to want to put into the dialer and hit on a repetitive basis, maybe just once a month or even once a quarter. So if you're on the dialer, you can literally hit about 100 calls in an hour. So if you have 500 leads that you need to follow up with, you can hit those in literally a day or 2 days if you're using the dialer. And the dialer is not something that you need to worry about on day one, but over the long haul, as you accumulate more and more leads, you definitely want to start using it. Carl asked, are they able to opt out or unsubscribe in the email? Yes, they are able to opt out and unsubscribe in the email, and a lot of people do that, and you'll actually be able to see in follow-up boss that there will be a notation that they have unsubscribed. So at that point, again, you're not going to be able to continuously email them, but you will be able to call them or text them on a periodic basis. All right, what is an imported lead? So an imported lead is when we manually enter in a lead ourselves. So in some cases, when the leads are coming in, we try to automatically route them through software to your account. But in some cases, if they don't automatically flow through, and again, this is totally a software issue, sometimes we have to manually import them, and you will see that they've been imported. I'm working on making that as close to 100% as possible because it takes us time, effort, and energy to manually enter them in, but that's what you'll be seeing. All right, why are some of my leads showing up as not contacted when I've spoken to them and it's in my notes? So the contacted, let me go back to a lead here. So this contacted, not contacted button is something that you control. So follow-up boss is a program, it's not a person. It doesn't know if you've actually spoken to anybody. Even if you put in a note, it still doesn't know. So you want to use this yourself, and the contacted, non-contacted, really all this is used for is over the long haul, just to know what percentage of the people you're actually able to speak to. So if you were to look at the data over the course of 6 months and you're only contacting, meaning speaking to 10% of the leads, then there's something wrong there because you should be speaking to at least 25 or 35% of the leads that come in. Is there a manual way to let us know when an imported lead comes in? So there's not, unless we individually email you. Leads, for the most part, should be coming in at least every other day, and you should be in follow-up boss pretty much every single day. So what I would recommend doing until we totally fix this problem is, literally when you wake up, go to leads, go to yourself, and then go to last added, and you'll be able to literally see, the time that they came in, and the ones, if you sort by last added, the ones that have come in recently come into the top. How often do you follow up on calls or leads in the short run and over the long run? All right, so anytime that a lead comes in, the first 10 days are the most important. So we utilize what we call the 10 days of pain. which means we call, text, and email them for 10 days until they tell us to, I don't know, the right word for this, but, they tell us to go away or they meet with us. If they're non-responsive after the first 10 days, then the lead becomes a lot less warm, and then that is when I would then put it into the dialer. And so what the best way to do it is to get all of your leads into the dialer that are over 10 days old, and then just hit those on a rotation. So in the beginning, you might be hitting those leads once a week or once every other week. And as long as you're just getting through it, as long as you're on the dialer getting through your leads, your older leads on a periodic basis, you will end up getting some more of those people that come back that filled out a form that for whatever reason they just weren't responsive in the beginning. Some of the stuff for you guys is going to go away now that we're going to have the inside sales agent. So once a lead gets to 10 days, I'm going to if it gets to 10 days and you haven't reached them yet, I am going to automatically going to put that into the inside sales agent's queue. And so so a lot of these calls, even if you're not making them, we're going to make them and try to revive some of the leads anyways. All right, miscellaneous entity questions. Did you set up an LLC in Nevada, or does it really matter what state? You hear it with all the big shots. Yeah, I remember this. I remember going back like 10, 15 years ago when I first started. You would read a book online about everyone recommends that you set up an entity in Nevada because it's cheaper, or Delaware because it's cheaper. In reality, I have never seen anybody actually do this. And you're talking about a very minimal savings. So Massachusetts is an expensive state to incorporate in, and with all the fees and everything, it's like $600 a year roughly per entity. And Nevada, I don't know the exact fees, but I think it's under $200. In reality, it's not much of a price difference, and every attorney that I've ever worked with has always said, do not set up an entity with real property in another state. And I'm sure there's a reason for that, and I'm not an attorney, but to me, if there is some reason why it doesn't make sense to set up in a different state, and you're talking about a $400 a year difference, and you're talking about properties that can be, end up being worth in the millions of dollars, I wouldn't even recommend taking a chance. When you click on the appointment button, let's see, the appointment button. All right, so when you click on the appointment button, does it only show you the appointments for today, or should it show you future appointments too? Okay, are you talking about the follow up today button? This button here, follow up today? The appointment button. Okay, so this is actually what we call a smart list. And let me just see. Yeah, so the answer to that is no. So I don't even know the easiest way to explain this, but you can create a smart list. And what a smart list does is it uses these tags. So you could create a smart list called Tom. And then you could go down here, create a new list, call it Tom, and the tags include Tom, and you save that. And then what you're going to get is anything that has that tag Tom is going to go in here. So I just tagged that Tom right here, and it went in there. So this appointment smart list, if you go into the gear here, you will see that the tag includes appointment. So unless you actually put the tag appointment in there, it won't be in there. So for the, how do you see the upcoming appointments? So there's a couple of things. So let me just see. Yeah, I know there's a way to do this. I think I'm going to have to get back to you on this. I know there's a way to do it. I believe you actually, this is going to get a little complicated. So I think you have to go into what we call Follow-Up Boss 2. And I believe there's a way to sort it in Follow-Up Boss 2. But what I would recommend doing, the easiest thing to do is this button right here in the bottom right-hand corner. This is a chat box that actually goes to a live person that works at Follow-Up Boss. So if you have a question on stuff like that, a lot of times they can give you a good answer. I don't use the appointments that way. Let me show you. I'll show you how I use the appointments. So what I have is that when somebody has an appointment on my team, a VA actually goes in, this girl up here, and she puts it into the spreadsheet for me. And so this for me is how I track it. And so it'll actually say, you know, the name, the person, and this is the, if you've never been on an appointment with us, but you're going to get an email after the fact basically asking you to fill out a form with some basic questions on what happened on the appointment. So I would start off by asking Follow-Up Boss here. If they can't get you an answer for whatever reason, let me know, and I can definitely figure it out for you. All right, next miscellaneous question. Have you opened up a not-for-profit organization to get ahead of all the other investors in the 14-day period? And so what this person is talking about, the 14-day period, it's, I believe, homepath. So homepath is an entity that owns a lot of bank-owned properties. I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it correctly, but what you'll see on MLS for these properties is that there's a 14-day waiting period for investors to bid on the properties. So you'll see a beat up property, one that you want to make an offer on, and you're actually not allowed to until owner occupants have made an offer for the first 14 days. So on the 15th day, as an investor, you're allowed to bid on this property. So I have not set up a not-for-profit organization for this because I don't buy any properties on the MLS, period. And a homepath property definitely counts as a property on the MLS. And I would, my guess would be that setting up a not-for-profit organization to bid on these as an investor is probably fraud, most likely. But even if it wasn't fraud, I still don't think you're going to get a good deal by bidding on these properties anyways, even if you were able to bid during the first 14 days. Even if a property's beat up and it's on MLS, it's really, really tough to get a good deal on it. I would just stay away from it. It's so much easier to get these deals off market. So I honestly wouldn't even fool with it whatsoever. Next question up. Do you build a buyer's list and work backwards, or focus on getting the properties first? So essentially the question is asking, do you build up a huge investor buyer list so that you can wholesale deals to, and then go out and find properties, or do you go out and find properties and then find the cash buyers? So this is a no-brainer for sure. I can't tell you how many calls I get a day with wholesalers who They just got out of a 3-day seminar, and they're asking me about all of the criteria, all of my home buying criteria. If they find me a deal, will I buy it from them? And it's almost comical because I get probably 3 or 4 of these calls a day, and invariably 99% of the time the person never gets back to me with a deal. So when you're first starting out, even if you're not first starting out, you do not want to waste your time building a buyer's list. At the end of the day, good investors will buy any deal that makes money. So if somebody has a deal for me in the greater Boston area and I can make money on it, there's no doubt I'm going to buy it, right? So same thing goes for every market across the US. You need to get a good deal first and then find a cash buyer. Finding cash buyers is really, really easy in this market. There are way more people with money and no deals than deals and no money. So if you find a great deal, it should be very, very easy to wholesale. And what I would recommend doing, the 2 easiest ways to find cash buyers is, number 1, go to a local auction for that particular city that you got the deal. So if you got a deal in Boston, Massachusetts, and you had it locked up, I would then go to an auction the next day in Boston, Massachusetts, and go there with a bunch of flyers and talk to every investor who's bidding. So anyone who's bidding at an auction and is willing to put up non-refundable money with a property that they haven't even gotten into, those are serious cash buyers. And at most of these auctions, you're going to have 10, 15, 20 of these people standing around. So you should effectively be able to wholesale every single deal that you ever get just at an auction. But then, for whatever reason, if you can't find a cash buyer at an auction that wants your deal, the next step, I would just Google search something really simple like Sell House Fast Boston, and what you're going to see is somebody like us right here. That's us. We come up first. So yeah, I mean, it's not hard to find cash buyers. And again, if the person's a serious cash buyer and it's a great deal, they're going to buy it, period. If you run a deal by 10, 15 cash buyers and they don't want it, it's not a good deal, and you need to go back and you need to renegotiate with the seller to get a better price. How do you handle direct mail from multifamily properties? Do you do anything special? I feel like it would be more difficult to get the letter in the hands of the owner, especially if they don't live in the property, but the property record, tax record says they do. Maybe the owner has their mail forwarded. Okay, so it's a valid concern, but not something I would worry about too much, because in most cases, the actual owner address is going to be in public record. So you're going to look at the multifamily in public record, and then it's going to say the actual owner address. So if they own a 3-family in Boston, but they actually live in a suburb north of Boston, as an example, most likely on tax records, it is going to list where they actually live. Now, you're going to miss some of these people. So it boils down to how much do you want one specific property. So if you really wanted, if there were only, say, 500 properties, period, that you wanted in a particular city, and they were all multifamily properties, and you only had 500 total people to prospect to, then I would recommend going this one extra step, which is to create a database of all of those sellers. And so what I would first do is I would look and I would say, okay, 20 Main Street, Boston is the 3-family. And then I would look who the owner is. Say the owner name is Tom Caffarella. What I then would do is I would search public records for everything that Tom Caffarella owns. So if Tom Caffarella owns an expensive single family, you can pretty much guarantee that if Tom Caffarella owns a bunch of 3-families and then an expensive single family, the expensive single family is where you live, where they live, and where you want to mail. Having said this, this is going to be an extra step. It's going to take a little bit of extra time. And when you go on public records, if the person does own, a few different pieces of property, you may end up have to mail a few different properties to definitely make sure that you get to them. So it boils down to how much do you want that specific property. For me, I do not do this because, if the majority of records in public record are accurate, it's not worth it for me to go the extra step because I'm hitting so many people. But if you're targeting specifically, it may make sense. The other thing that I would recommend doing, which is going to eliminate this problem altogether, is also to call them. So no matter where they live, if you get their cell phone, you're going to be able to reach them. So I would recommend, if you're going to mail, always call behind. And we do that on every single mailer that goes out. We're calling them as well. So mail and call if you can. Tom, what's your opinion on driving for dollars? Driving for dollars is the biggest waste of time on the face of the planet. So the premise of driving for dollars is that you're going to spend hours and hours and hours driving around the towns where you want to buy houses in, looking for beat up properties. And the premise is that because these properties are beat up, they're more likely to sell to an investor. And this is flawed logic for two reasons. Number one, number one, just because a property is beat up does not mean that that person wants to sell at a discount. Okay? I've bought about 1,000 properties total. I have never seen a real correlation between somebody who has a house that needs work and wanting to sell to an investor, per se. For the most part, it's a situational thing, right? So either they've lived in the home for a long time, they don't want to list the property, or they are moving, or they just lost their job, or there's a specific life situation that tends to lead to the sale of this property, and not necessarily because the property needs work. The other reason why I think this is really, really bad logic is because you're then going to, by definition, eliminate all of the motivated sellers who have houses in pretty good condition that want to sell to investors. So if you're driving around and you're only finding the most beat up properties, you're not going to get to that person who has a property that's in a 5 or 6 out of 10 condition and is motivated to sell, that you could have went in, put $10,000 or $15,000 into the property and made a really good profit. And in this market especially, those are some of the best deals because of the lack of inventory across the country. There is huge demand for properties that are in a 6, 7, 8 out of 10 condition. And a lot of times we're getting 10 out of 10 condition prices for properties that are only 7 out of 10. And you're going to miss those completely if you're driving for dollars. In addition to the fact that you're going to just be driving around all the time, and I just don't see it. I'd rather you spend that time. So instead of driving for 10 hours to find 10 houses that need work, during those 10 hours, pick up the phone, get on the dialer, and hit every single house in that neighborhood, right? So in the same amount of time, you could literally have talked to a bunch of people. And to me, that's more effective. What's the best way to get a list of all the apartments that are 5 to 20 units in a single zip code? I had the list downloaded from Agent Pro 247, but I'm not sure it's correct. So in my world, if you're an agent, which is one of the reasons why I recommend every single investor become an agent. So all I have to do as an agent is say, this is the town. I want multifamily. So I know that if it's a 5-family, it has at least five baths. So I'm going to search. All right, I'm going to come up with 83 results. I'm going to go in, I'm going to export these, and then I'm going to have a VA just remove all the ones that are not 5 units. So I'm going to remove this 2-family, I'm going to remove this 2-family, I'm going to remove this 3-family. But as you can see, most of these are 5+ buildings here. And you can always see by the number of baths that they have. So for example, this one it's listed 4 to 8 units, but it's got 6 baths. 90% chance this is a 6-family. You can also go, so if you are not an agent and you can't do this on your own, I would recommend becoming friendly with an agent, but it's just a lot easier to become an agent. You can also use a company called ListSource. ListSource has really, really great data. So you can literally build a list based on any sort of criteria that you want. The only issue with ListSource is that you're going to pay. So I believe ListSource is like 20 or 25 cents per record. So if you're running a ton, like we built a huge database, and so we did not use ListSource because it would have been so incredibly expensive. We just built it completely on our own. But if you're only looking, like for example, in this case, they're looking for 5 to 20 units in a single zip code, most likely that's not going to be super expensive. Like I just ran it for one zip code around here, and there were 83 total records, and not all of these were 5 families. So that basically wouldn't have cost you practically anything. So depending on the number of records that are there, will determine that. So, all right, what else do you guys have for me? Anything else? I know we covered a good amount. So for those of you who are on the call and who I'm already working with, if you need me, you have my booking calendar probably already, but I got a domain for it, www.bookwithtom.com. So if you just go there and click it, just to make it easier so you don't forget, this is my booking calendar. If you need me, you just literally put a day and time on my calendar that works for you, and then you automatically get a booking with me. And so if you are on the call and you're not currently working with me and you want to talk about any of these items, just book me. It'll block off automatically 1 hour, and I'll help you with anything that I can, whether that be marketing or anything strategic related to getting your investment business off the ground. Like I mentioned in the very, very beginning, all of this stuff is going to be recorded. So you can always go back. You can always listen to any of them. I'll show you where to get that. You can just go on my URL, tomcaffarella.com. And of course, this is freezing up right now. But if you go to Q&A sessions here, they're recorded and they're also time-stamped. So obviously, some of the stuff is going to pertain to most people. Some of it is only going to pertain to some people. And for some people, out of the whole hour long or however long that we go, there may only be snippets that you're kind of interested in. So like, for example, if you missed the April 20th call and you were interested in my take on whether SEO is worth it, you would literally click on the video, go to the 45-minute and 58-second mark, and you'll get the answer to the question right there. Call just came in. A question just came in. Where's the best place to get a purchase and sale agreement? The best place to get a purchase and sale agreement is from a real estate agent in the city that you live, in the state that you live. However, I would venture to guess that this right here, because we're talking about Maine, and this is Association of Realtors form, I'd be willing to bet that 99.99% chance that this is the purchase and sale agreement that every single person in Maine uses. So that was pretty easy. Now, I'd probably verify this, but I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and just knowing that it's the Maine Association of Realtor form, I'd be very surprised if this is not the one that everybody uses. So that was pretty much easy enough. You can take a look at ours as well. I would recommend putting a couple of things. So what I would always recommend doing, this is the one that we use. I would always recommend putting in here your entity name and the verbiage or its assignee, so that if for whatever reason you want to assign the contract, it legally allows you to assign the contract. The other things that I put in here that's going to vary state by state. So in Massachusetts, and again, this is going to vary by area, but some of the sewer systems are on septic, so it's a septic system. If you have a failed septic system, that can be big money. And so we automatically, because sometimes we forget to ask whether or not it's on town sewer, or if it's a septic system, we automatically put in here that if it's on a septic system, the seller is required to test it, and if it fails, they have to agree to reduce the purchase price by $20,000. I would probably put that in your contract unless you know for some reason that your area just doesn't have anything on a septic system, which it may not, very well may not. This depends on where you live. All right, anything else before we hop off? I will definitely stay around as long as you guys need me, but if you don't need me, I'll give it another minute, and if I don't see anything come in, we will get this posted to the website, and I'm available, email or whatever, when you guys need me during the week. All right, it looks like nothing else is coming in, so I am going to wrap this up. Again, if you need anything offline, just go to www.bookwithtom.com, and I'll get you guys what you need. All right, thank you very much. I will see you next Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Thanks.